I don't even know why. Yeah. So authentication is username and password. So you type in your username, you type in your password. I'll actually just stop sharing at the moment. So yeah, authentication, username and password. Authorization determines whether or not that user has access to various portions of your application. So that's, you're authorized to use a certain part of the application. Where when you authenticate, you're like, all right, make sure that that user is in fact that user. And there are a couple different ways that a user can be authorized, or you can do authorization. Has anybody heard of the couple different ways?
I mean, you can use groups, right, to do like a general, these people have these authorizations.
I think that's specific to Django, but yeah, I don't know specifically how. I don't know how that works in Django. Like, I don't know how groups work in Django.
I just remember you can do the groups from the admin page, and it's also a thing with AWS where you have to have certain groups that you give certain permissions to.
Yeah, that might be very specific to Django and like AWS, but I guess that is kind of a form of authorization. But when we're dealing with HTTP requests and authorization, there's two main. I think there's only two. There might be more. I don't know. But there's session tokens and JWT tokens, which is JavaScript Web Tokens. And there is a difference between the two. So in the past, session tokens were very popular, but there was a limitation, and there is a almost like a performance. I won't say performance hit, but versus JWT, there was some performance that you had to consider. So when we're dealing with session tokens, think of when you log in, go to a website or an application, the server will respond with a session token, which is just like, kind of, remember in new site when you would log in, it would respond with that big long string of characters, like numbers and characters. It's something like that. It looks similar to that. But that session token is stored on the server, either in server memory or even in the database. And it's also stored in the client in the browser. So anytime the client, so in the browser, would make a request, it would send that token to the server, and the server would check against the server memory and the session memory, or even in the database, to see if that token exists. And if it exists, that means that user is authorized to do various things within the application. Whereas JWT, so the session token, the user information is stored on the server. Where JWT, same kind of process. User logs in, goes to the server responds with a JavaScript web token. It looks similar. It's a bunch of alphanumeric characters. It doesn't look like it makes a whole lot of sense. And then that user stores that on the client, so in the browser. And then every time the user makes a request, they send that JWT token back to the server. But instead of the server storing that in memory, it has like a specific hashing function, or it decrypts that token to determine whether or not that username and password or whatever information is stored within the token. So all the user information is physically stored within the token. And when you send it to the server decrypts it, makes sure that user, all that information exists within the token. And if that's good, that means the user is authorized to access various forms of the application. And we're going to kind of go over that and specifically set up a JWT token in Django. And we'll kind of show you some different applications that allow you to decrypt your JWT token and see what's actually embedded in that token. All right. What questions do you have? Just know that there's two different ways to do authorization. And generally going forward, JWT is a very popular and more common than session token. Or I don't want to say should be used, but is implementing stuff now. It's generally JWT token. When I first learned it, it was all session token and Node.js. But all right. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to set up a Django backend and a React front end, and we're going to use authorization or JWT token to authorize the user. So, all right. Don't feel like you have to follow along because it is kind of a lot. But all right. So I'm going to CD into my desktop and go into CP challenges, just November. And I'm going to create a new directory just to store both my backend and my front end for this. So I'm going to call it, what is it? React Django JWT, just so we know kind of what that is. I'm going to CD into React Django. Whoop. Django WT. I'm going to list everything out in here. All right. And I'm going to clear it. Now I'm going to code this into a new VS Code window. And for whatever reason, that code thing doesn't open up. It literally opens a brand new different window, which I don't like. I think VS Code did an update. All right. All right. So we're in my React Django JWT, and I want to create a brand new Django app or Django project. What's the first thing I need to do to create a Django project? Ashley.
Virtual environment.
Yep. Let's create a virtual environment. Python-make venv. Cool. I created my virtual environment. Next thing I need to do is go into my virtual environment and activate. Cool. Now there's several things I'm going to install to use JWT or the JavaScript Web Token, and it's all going to be using the Django REST framework. So everything's going to be using Django REST framework for the JWT. So I'm going to pip install Django, sitecob G2. Is that right? Sitecob G2. I'm going to just install those, and then I'm going to install the other ones. Uh-oh. Why did that not work?
Don't you need like an ampersand or something to say install both of these in between?
No, you shouldn't have to. I think I spelled it wrong. Yep. There we go. No, you can just do space separated. All right. There we go. And next thing I'm going to pip install the Django REST framework. There we go. I'm going to also do pip install Django REST framework JWT that generates a JavaScript web token for us. And then I'm also going to pip install Django cores headers. All right. So those are like the 5 different things I'm installing right now. Cool. And now I can actually create my Django project. Django admin, start project. And for this one, since this is going to be the back end of my project, I'm just going to call it back end. So created a back end right there. Cool. All right. So here's my back end project. And now in my settings, I need to add kind of a lot of things in here. So first thing I need to install or add to my installed app is the REST framework. also CORS headers. And I think that's it for right now. But in addition to that, I need to add something to my middleware. I think we've done this before. So in front of the common middleware, it could be anywhere, but it just has to be above this Django common middleware. We need to add the CORS headers.middleware.CORS middleware. I think this is where Ankur was running into little issues yesterday because of the W. Is that right, Ankur? I don't remember.
Yeah, that was embarrassing, but yes.
Yeah. And so we need to make sure that this CORS middleware is above this common middleware. It could be all the way up here, but just make sure it's above the common middleware. And I just want to make sure that I've added that correctly. All right. And now we're also going to have to add a couple. So there's common middleware. I need to override some default settings for the REST framework. Framework equals, and I'm just going to copy this out so I don't make any errors. So right here. So the REST framework, we have got this default permission classes, which means, hey, anytime a user makes a request, make sure they're authenticated. So it's like, hey, in the REST framework permissions, make sure the user is authenticated. And then we also have this default authentication classes. This determines, hey, what kind of authentication, or I'm sorry, authentication do you want to do? Do you want to use, or what kind of authentications do you want to check for? And we want to check for JavaScript Web Token authentication, session authentication, and then basic authentication. These are just kind of default. It's going to check through all of them, but this is the main one we're going to be using, the JavaScript Web Token authentication. And last, we want the CORS origin whitelist. And right now we're just going to use our HTTP localhost 3000. So our React app can communicate with our Django app. All right. Questions about adding the REST framework, CORS headers, the CORS middleware, and then this REST framework. And you can read all about this in today's lecture. And we have a link to essentially a very similar tutorial that pretty much goes through this whole thing.
Tom, random, but how did you get the highlighted text to shift up and shift all the other text down with your keyboard?
So I'm doing Option, like Alt or Option, up and down. Like
Okay.
so, like that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep, no problem. All right. All right. So next, in our URLs, instead of, we've got our admin path, what we're going to also import, we're going to say, hey, from the REST framework JWT, so that REST framework JWT module, they've got it default views within there, just like we have just like we would create views in our normal Django app. And that in the REST framework JWT, they have a view that specifically grabs a JWT token for us. So it's called obtain JWT token. And right here, we're going to create a path or URL to obtain a new JWT token. So anytime you log in, you want to come to this token, this specific view, run this view to obtain a new JWT token. Let's call it token auth. So anytime a user goes to, localhost 8000/token auth, we want to run this JWT token view, and this will obtain a JWT token for us. I'm going to delete this. All right. So let's go ahead and test this. We haven't actually created an app yet, but we will shortly because There's a few other things that we need to do. But first, let's just test this to make sure that we are able to obtain a JavaScript web token. So the first thing I'm going to do is Python manage.py migrate. Yeah, let's migrate that. Uh-oh. Did that not work? Let's see, where am I located at? So, all right, I'm in the wrong directory. So backend. So there's my manage.py or file. So now I can Python manage.py migrate. And I noticed I installed Scicop G2, but I'm not using a Postgres database. It's okay for right now. It's fine. It'll still work the same. Cool. So now I migrated everything. Now let's create a super user, and so I can go into admin or go to this URL and log in a user and obtain a JWT token. So Python manage.py create super user. All right, TA preet, email address. Let's keep it empty. 123 123. Yep, cool. So I just created a super user. Now I'm going to run the server. And all right, it's working. Now if I go to admin, so let's come over here. Let's open up a new window. I go to localhost 8000. Now if I go to admin, I can log in with the super user here, 123. Here's admin. But if I wanted to log out and then go to that, what is it called? Token auth. So if I go to token auth right here, it's going to run this obtain JWT view method. All right, so cool. So now I'm within the Django REST framework, obtain JSON web token. All right, so returns a JSON web token that can be used for authenticated requests. All right, so here's the initial response. But if I log in using my TA preet 123 and I create a post, notice I get this long response back, or this a JSON response back with a key of token and a value of this long token. So this is what your JWT token is. And now I can store this into local storage or session storage on the browser. And every time I send a request back, I can send this token in the headers of whatever request I'm sending. What questions do you have so far about that process?
I got a question. So
Yep.
is JSON Web Tokens pretty much like the industry standard for security now for login accounts?
I don't know if it's the industry standard, but yeah, I can't speak whether or not it's the industry standard, but it just alleviates storing the user information on the server versus the client. So where the session token, like the user identity would have to be stored on the server. Whereas now using JSON web tokens, the user identity can be stored on the client or in the browser. But let's take a look at this and see, like this doesn't make any sense to us, but if we decode it, which there's a nice app that allows us to decode this, it's called jwt.io. If I scroll down here and I put in, if I delete that and I put in mine, notice how, look at when it's decoded, I've got, look what's stored right there, my username and my other information. So that's all stored within here. So you can kind of see what part of this string corresponds to what part of the decoded information. So this first part, when it's decoded, it says what type of algorithm it's using to hash or decode or encode and decode the JWT. So it's using the HS256 algorithm, hashing algorithm or decoding algorithm, and it's a type, it's the JWT. So that's what this is. And then the second portion of this is my user information. That's what's in here. And then, I don't like how it's doing that. And then this last part is essentially, it runs this hashing algorithm, and it adds the header and the payload together. Like it encodes both of them and adds them together. And then it also decodes or essentially hashes that into what this is. So essentially these two added together and hashed is what this is. And so if someone else, so since this is stored on the client, so in the browser, if someone were to access this, like they can technically log in as me forever. Except notice right here in the payload, it's got this little EXP. This is when that payload or this token expires, when it actually expires. So these tokens don't last forever. So I'm eventually going to have to log in again to get generate a new token. So if I look right here, it says Tuesday, April 13th at 9:02. Yeah, is that at 9:02? So it looks like it probably already expired. So I think it only lasts for 5 minutes. So this token lasts for 5 minutes. And you can change that. You can make it last for an hour, a day, 30 days, 6 months, a year. Just depends on how long you want it. And you can customize that in the settings. So if someone stole this and made a change to it, so like made it like a G, so that's G. But if someone came in there and made it a lowercase g, this JavaScript web token is no longer valid, because down here, these two values added together does not equal this value anymore. So that's kind of how that's how it's safe. But if I made that an uppercase G, now it equals one another, because this is last part actually verifies the signature. Kind of cool. So that's what this is. This is the JavaScript web token that we get back. All right. But usually when you send information back, we want to like kind of customize that response back. So I'm already logged in. If I do a quick refresh, it looks like it resubmitted it. But if I resubmitted it, I just want to see if the expiration time changed. Yeah, so now expires at 9:08. So it's about 5 minutes. But now we need to somehow store this in the browser at some point, and then anytime a user logs in, or maybe a user is already logged in and wants to navigate the app, we need to determine whether or not this current user is logged in or not. So we're going to have to create another portion of our Django app, Django project. All right, so I'm going to kill the server. So next, I'm going to actually create a Django app that is specific to verifying a user, whether a user is currently logged in or maybe even signing up a user that will return a JWT token. So now I'm going to create a Django app. So I'm going to say Python manage.py start app. I'm just going to call it core. So we have this app called core, and this is going to be used for, authorizing a user, creating a user, making sure that a current user exists, or if a user is already logged in and has a JWT, and checking against whether or not that user is authorized. Cool. So next, I can register this app with my backend. Next thing I want to do is in here, let's create a couple of serializers. So serializers.py. I'm going to change that. So for our serializers, we need to serialize whether or not like the current user. So when we sign in, we need to serialize the current user. And we also need to serialize when a new user signs up, like signs up a new user. When the user signs up, we also want to send a token back when that user signs up. So we're going to say from the REST framework, not JWT, REST framework, import serializers. We're going to say from the REST framework, JWT.settings. We're going to import API settings. And then from the Django.auth or Django contrib.auth models, we're going to import the basic user model. So this is the basic user model. So we're going to create two serializers. We're going to say class user serializer, serializers.model serializer. And this specific serializer just serializes a current user, whether a user is already logged in or not, or whether a user is logged in, and it just serializes that current user. So we're going to say class meta. The model is the default user model, and fields. What fields do we want? We want the username. We can say like email if we want. We can say the ID perhaps. So the user ID is kind of nice to have as well. So I think that's good. Questions about that? So this literally just serializes the current user. Now we need to serialize a new sign-up user and respond with a token, with a new JWT token. Class user serializer with token, and serializers model serializer. So this, we're going to create two variables, serializers dot serialized method field, and also a password. Serializers dot char field, write only equals true. The next thing we're going to do is create a method that grabs a token and returns a token. So def get token self dot object JWT payload handler equals API settings dot JWT payload. And notice how it's kind of already coming up right here. We're going to create a method that responds with a specific request. And we're going to customize that and also add it to settings. And then JWT encode handler. Again, it's very similar to, not that, but instead JWT encode handler. And then payload equals JWT payload handler, takes in that an object, and then the token equals JWT encode handler that takes in the payload. And that returns a token.
Is the object that you're passing in on line 20, is that essentially the username and password that the user submits?
Yes. Let me double check that. Yeah, I'm highly confident it is, but yeah. Yeah. So def, so the next thing we actually have to create that user. So def create self validated data, validated. We have a password equals validated data. So this also, we're just popping off the password. There's none. Now we're creating an instance of that user. Model validated data. And now we're actually saving or setting that password on that instance. If password is not none, instance dot set password. And then we're saving that instance to the database. And then we're returning the instance right here. And at the very fine last thing, class meta. We're doing just this very same thing, meta user model. And then instead of returning the like username and ID, we're passing in the token, username, and the password. So yeah, this just serializes the new user's information, including the token. So this is it just handles new user signups. And let's go to the views. So with the views, I'm gonna actually just copy all this over. So we're gonna import a bunch of stuff. We're gonna import HTTP response redirect. The basic user model, permissions and status. We're going to import an API view decorator. We're going to import the response method or response class from the REST framework. And we're going to also import the API view class from the REST framework. So these are all, because before we would respond with like a JSON response, but now we're going to be responding with the response class of the REST framework. So I'm just going to copy this over. So normally when we create a method or a view, this is just like a basic view method, but it has this decorator up here, API view, which just allows us to takes in specific HTTP requests and responds with a specific request or respond with a specific response. And the response is just like the current user. So this just grabs the current user by their token and just returns their data. So we get a request, we serialize that user by passing that request.user into the user serializer, comes over here, serializes that user, returns the username and ID, and then we just return the response class with the serialized data. And the next one is this user list. So this is a class view, specifically with an API view. So it's inheriting the API view from the REST framework views. It's very similar to the default view class, except it takes in HTTP responses. Permissions classes allow this allows pretty much anybody to come to this user list, which is normal. It's okay. And I'm gonna actually, instead of making that a tuple, make it that. So this creates a new user. It's a post request. There's also get request. You can do a def.get. So it takes in a request, serializes that user. If that serializer is valid, it saves that, and then it just responds with the serialized data, like with this information. Next, we need to create our URLs for here. So if we come over here, I'm going to just copy this. And just like our basic URLs, we can, from .views, import current user and the user list view from our views. So import those two. What is this? I don't know where this came from. Whoops. Delete, don't save. All right. So here in our path, if we go to like the current user, we can run that current user method to grab that current user. And then for here, if we want to create a new user, we can go to the user list or users, and it'll run the user list as a view. And this last part is a little, so we've created serializers before, we've created views. These just look a little bit differently. But this last part, inside of our Django project, we're going to create where'd it go? A utils.py file. It's a utility. It's kind of like a helper function. And right here, remember we in our serializers, we had this JWT payload handler. This is what we're kind of overriding in this utils method. So when we create a new user or we log in a user, it's going to respond with a token and then a user key with the user's information right here. So this is kind of like a helper function. We're going to be overriding some default behavior. And then lastly, in our settings, anywhere, but let's go up to the REST framework. We're going to create JWT auth. So this is some default behavior. We're overriding some JWT auth settings. JWT response payload handler. So it usually has a default payload handler, but we're going to override it and call this one. So anytime we respond with a new user, we want to include that user information in addition to the token. So we can say backend, it's the name of our project, utils, which is this file, utils, and then call this my JWT. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Right here, utils, my JWT response handler. So this is some default settings that we're overriding, and we want to call this function. Now, if I Python manage.py, run server, if I come over here and just click enter, token auth. Now, if I do TA preet, and if I did everything correctly, which I may have messed up somewhere, notice how I get that user with the username and ID attached to the response when I log in. And let's see, I'm going to try this. Postman, if I want to go to create a new user, where is it? Instead of going to token auth, if I go to users, I haven't tried this before, but if I go to users and in the body, what do I need? Username, Tom, password. Not sure if this is going to work. What is it? A, B, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, something like that. I don't think I need an email, do I? Think that's it. Username, password. I guess I'll just do an email. tom@email.com. I send that. All right, yeah, it didn't work. If I can actually see. Users, post, users not found. Let's see. Yeah, not quite sure why that didn't work. I've never tried that before. It's probably something I must have messed up, but so now so I logged in with that user. Again, if I go to that jwt.io, delete that. There I get the same stuff. All right. Clear. What questions do you have?
Why are we sending back the user information in addition to the token?
It's kind of nice to have. It's generally when you like log in, you kind of also want to respond with the user. It's generally like best practice. So if there is a user, so think of it to say when you in React, if you respond or you log in, you get a user back, you can do some like conditional rendering, whether or not a user exists or not, based off of different components. So if a user in state exists, then you can do some conditional rendering.
Like put their name on the nav bar.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to do that here shortly. Yeah, stuff like that. Or just have like certain things render. But yeah, like hi, TA Preet or something like that. And again, we're going to do that here shortly. So that's your JWT.
Is this all pretty standard? I guess I'm imagining how we're going to implement this in our projects. It seems like it'd just be like copy paste what you just did.
Yeah, pretty much. Like you can copy and paste all this. Now don't think, I'm gonna actually, let's go ahead and get started. So we created all the backend logic to obtain a JWT token and to handle a new user login. So now let's go ahead and create the front end, the React app version of that. So I'm going to actually close out all of the backend stuff. All right, so we've got our backend. So I am going to list everything out. I'm going to CD up one level. I'm going to create a separate terminal. Yeah, let's actually keep the Django terminal that server running, the backend server. So list backend Python manage.py run server. So we've got that server running. Now I can deactivate this portion of it. List everything out. So I'm going to create a front end React app on the same level as the backend and virtual environment. The virtual environment could be within the backend, but I just have it the same level. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to npx create React app. I'm just going to call this one the front end. All right. So now it's going to create a React app called front end. Does anybody have any questions?
What would happen if you stayed in your virtual environment for this front end part in React?
Nothing
Oh,
really.
okay.
Yeah. This might take a couple of minutes. So we're also going to install React Router DOM after we're done that. And then we're going to create, a home page, a sign up page, a login page. And then we're also going to create an API or an API directory that holds our users API or user APIs that allow us to make those requests to those backend routes. So we can, log in a user, create a new user, and grab an existing user. So I'm going to CD in the front end, list everything out. I'm going to npm install React Router DOM as well. So here is our React app. Cool. And I'll do all these in functional base components as well. All right. So as that's loading up, I'm going to create two directories. I'm going to create a pages directory and an API directory. So pages, this should be relatively familiar, or not like there. API. And if I did have additional components, if I expanded on this application, I would have like a components directory too to hold our components. But for right now, it's just going to be a home page, sign up page, and a login page. Does anybody have any questions about the steps we're going to take? All right.
I had a question about Django.
Yep.
Are we gonna see you like actually like do a proper deployment? Like, because I think the way we've been doing it, we've had like debug sets of true and keeping our like secret keys kind of in there, like just I don't know, setting it up a little more properly.
No, I mean, like what we're doing now is totally normal. You can set the debug to false, and if you had secret keys, you can add those as environmental variables in Heroku. But if we have questions about that, we can take that offline or
Okay.
do it later today, or some later like tomorrow or Thursday, because those are open days. Clear. All right. So in our pages, let's just create a home page. So homepage.js, RCS, React stateless component. All right, that didn't work. There we go. We have our home page. And I'm just going to say home page right now. And I'm going to create a login page as well. Login page.js, RCS, a login page, not home page. And I'm going to create another sign up page. JS, RCS, sign up page. All right. Cool. We've got our 3 pages. Now let's go to our app.js and create some routes to display those specific pages. So I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff like so. I don't need this anymore as well. So what we need to import, we can import React from React. We need to import browser router as router, and also the route component from React router DOM. What else can we import? We need to import the home page, login page, etc. So home page from pages / home page. And we could do that with the login page, as well as the sign up page. Okay. Now let's actually just render some routes. What is it? Router. Like so. Let's create a div. And then let's create 3 routes. Route. Ugh. And so we want the exact path. to equal just our home page, which just goes to /, and we want to render the component the home page. Let's run this. npm start. What questions do you have about creating the home page, login page, and sign up page, and then in our app.js at the highest level of our React app, creating our router?
What's the purpose of the exact path?
So the exact path. So if we just had, so if we just had path like so, if I'll actually show you here in a second, actually. So it means, hey, if we just had path, anytime it hit the first / it would always go to the home page. So if we had path down here, like the login, which we're going to do, like so, it would look in the route and it'd say, hey, there's a /, even though we're going to / login page, it'd hit this route and it would automatically render the home page. So that's why we need the exact path. So when it just goes to that / and there's nothing else after it, that's the exact path we want to render the home page. So, yep. So if you come over here, we've got our home page. If we go over here, login, we've got our login page. Great. And the last one we want is the sign up page. Great. And let's just check out that route. Sign up page. Okay, we've got our 3 pages here. But now in our login page, I'm going to click on my login page, split the screen, come over here, close that, and come over here. Let's create a login form that we can actually log in a user. I should move my gigantic water bottle. So here we'll create a form that has a couple of inputs. I'm just gonna copy this form over. It's really ugly. So if I come over here and I go to login, there we've got username and password. And now, let's see. What else do we need when we create a form? Anybody?
You're not using any like React Strap or React Bootstrap, correct?
Right, not right now, no. So when
Like
I create
a handle login method.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, let's create a handle login method. All right. So I can do const handle login, takes in any event. And what do I need from here? I need to extract like the username and password. All right. So first thing I need to do is like event prevent default. And now I can say like, hey, let the user object. And I need a username. I do event dot target. And what's the name? So I've got a name on this input. So I'm going to grab the username dot value. And likewise with the password. Cool. And now let's just console log that just to make sure user object is actually being rendered, or actually being, I'm actually extracting that information from the form. And then down here on the form, I can have an on submit handle login. All right. And now if I type in like Ron Burgundy, or I'll just do Tom again. And then like 1, 2, 3, if I submit that, I get the username and password right there. All right. But now I need to do something with that username and password. So if I go back here, I need to create an API for that. So here I can create a user, oh, what the hell? User API.js. And now I can create my login. So const login takes in that user object and does something to it. Do you want me to use async awake or just .then?
Async await.
Async await.
All right, async. I can do try. What is it? Try catch. Error. Console. Dot error. Error. So I can say let response equals fetch. And now what's the URL to grab a current like a user that's already created? Does anybody remember from the Django? So if I go to here, go to URLs, it's this one. So token auth. So I can do HTTP / localhost, what is it, 8,000 / token auth. All right. I think I need that / there too. And now since this is a post request, we need the method post. We need the headers, content type, application JSON, and last, the body, we need a JSON.stringify the user object. And I think we need async, or I'm sorry, await here.
You have a typo in application.
Applicate. Thank you. And now I'm just going to console log the response. Maybe, hopefully we get something back. And the fact that I'm console logging this with a wait there might be an issue. I'm not quite sure. Actually, I'm just going to return the response, see what that does. All right. So, all right. So this login takes in the user object from the login page right here, the username and password comes into here. We're fetching to the token auth because we want to receive a token from for that user, and we're JSON stringifying that, and then we're grabbing that response and just returning that response. All right. So next. So is this what this is? Login page. So let's see how we want to do this. We can do like an async await again. Oh, not in the login page. Boop. Async. And now let response equals await. Is it login? And that takes in the user object. Cool. But let's go back to the user API. All right, we're not actually exporting that. So export login. Is that all I need to do?
Need to import it.
And then in the login page, so I'm getting a thing error there, import login from user. API / user API. All right. And now I'm just going to console log the response here. Let's just see if what we get. Might get an error, might not. Fingers crossed. So if I refresh this. So we already know we have an existing user called TA Preet, and now I'm going to submit it. And we get a response. Status code 400, body. All right, looks like we might need to do some stuff. So, whoop. So maybe here, let data equals await response.json, and then return data. See if that works maybe. Preet 1 2 3. There we go. So we've got our token, we have our username. Great, awesome. But now what do we want to do with this information?
Send it with our GET requests
Send it with,
for authorization.
so we're already authorized. We're getting that
Alright.
token back.
We want to store it to our state in like the main app.
Okay, in the main app. When you say main app, what do you mean by that?
In your app.js. So then, or we could use it as we could do a use context so the entire application has access to it.
Okay. I'm going to bring it all up to the top right now and use it that way for right now. And if we want to go back and refactor it to use context, but right now I'm just going to move everything up to here. So this login page. Okay. So we have this handle login function that's in the login page, but we want it to be stored up here because when we get that response, we want to store it the state at the very top of the app. So I'm going to move this at the very top, somewhere up here. But I also need to add this handle login and pass it down to here to the login page. So I can do const render login page. That just returns the login page. And have this handle login function add as a prop. And now down here, instead of component, render the login component, I can do render login page. And now I can also move this login to up here. Oh, see, it already imported it. Thank you. But now I need to do some destructure and handle login like so. Where does it say login is not defined? App.js. Oh, login page. Like so. There we go. And now let's see if I get the same. Cool. That's great. Let's see, what else do I want to do? So I've got the login page. After I log in, maybe I want to route to the home page. So I click login and it automatically pushes me to the home page. So maybe I want to do that. Maybe. Does that make sense? So the response, then I can do So you said I want to add something to state as well. So maybe, yeah, maybe I want to use state. All right. So I can say like const user set user use state initial value is null. And then after I log in, I can say like, hey, if response dot, what was it? Dot user set user to user, maybe something like that. Does that make sense? And then do I have access to history here? Not quite sure if I do or not. Unexpected history. Do I have props? So if I wanted to, after I log in, click submit, I get a user response. I like automatically want to route to the home page. How do I go about doing that?
Is that when you redirect? Use the redirect?
Is there a redirect?
You like push to the history, I think.
Yeah. Do I have access to props.history? So I don't have access to, what if I put props up here? I don't even know. Let's check it out. Refresh. I can actually just do it down here. So it's undefined. So how do I push?
Did you import
Import what?
React router DOM?
What am I importing?
Import redirect from React router DOM?
Redirect? Like this one?
Yes.
Okay. And how does this work? Router.
So it's a component.
So I can return that component.
And then it has a prop, I think, of 2.
Okay, so I can say, hey, after I'm done, return redirect Something like that. See if that works.
I had a redirect props one too. I don't know if that one might have been.
Uh-oh, what's going on? So if I go TA preet, 1, 2, 3.
On your set user, don't you need to go response.user?
On my set, yep. But I'm not even getting, let's see if this works. TA preet, 1, 2, 3. App.js line 27. So is that redirect not user working? Let's see. I want to see if this works. Use history. Might be a way we can use history. So I'm going to import use history. If that's not working. Something like this, maybe. Like so, and then I can do history.location, or what is it? History.push.
Tom, was the issue that you just needed to include or import redirect?
I did. I had it imported and it wasn't
Oh,
working.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. It could also be like my backend's not working right. Uh-oh. Push of undefined.
Didn't you use a different username before?
No, it was cannot read push of undefined. Let's just console log history. Oh, I think on. Yeah, cannot read property push of undefined. Oh, it's not necessary, but we'll figure that out at another time. But okay, so we have a user. Let's actually console log the user just to make sure that that exists. Okay, cool. So we have our user. And if I refresh this, our user goes away. So how do we go about making our user kind of always kind of persist? So when we log in, TA preet, well, it's actually the response. Again, just to kind of show you what that looks like. So we have TA preet, 1, 2, 3. We have this token. Where do we want to store the token? Remember, the token lives on the client, so in the browser. So there's a couple places we can store it. Store in session storage or local storage. So let's store this into local storage. So does anybody remember how to, so we get a response back. We can say, response back. If response, yeah, I'm wondering if I should even have this user there because I'll probably get an error anyway. But so if we get response dot token, so if we get a token response back, we can say, hey, local storage dot set item. We can call it like token or auth token. And we can set it to the response dot token. And if we get a token back, that generally means we get a user back as well. So we don't even need that. All right. So if I type in local storage here, oh, let's actually local storage dot clear. And go to the home page, go to login page. Here we go. We have a user is null. We have local storage. There's nothing in local storage. I do TA preet 123. I get my username. And now let me go into local storage and see what's in there. So we have our local storage here as well. So now we have our token stored in local storage. But when I refresh this, my user is null. So pretty much, but what can we do to grab whether or not a current user is logged in or not? Every time you come to this, we load the page. We want to check to say, hey, is there a current user that's logged in? If there is, let's grab that current user and set it to state. So we can say in our use effect, which we need to import, oh, it's up there already. Let's write a method called const get user. And let's do async. What am I doing? Async. And here, we want to say, hey, check local storage to see if there is a token in there. And if there is, grab it and send an API request back to the backend to check that if there's a current logged in user. So we can say, hey, if local storage dot get item, so we're getting an item from local storage, is it called auth user or auth token? So we can say like, whoops, yeah, whatever. If there is an auth token, do something with it. So if it doesn't equal null, do something with it. So if I could do local storage dot get item auth token, there we have a token. So if it's not null, now if we clear it, if we did the get item again, we get null. So it doesn't exist now because I cleared local storage. But if we do have it, we need to send an API request back to the backend, which we haven't created yet. So let's go back to user API and write let get or const get logged in user. That takes in the token. So let's do async. Try catch error console.error.
Question, Tom.
Yep.
Right now, your handle login method, is that checking to see that that user exists in the backend? Or right now you're just typing whatever username, whatever password, and it's going to give you a token anyway.
No, so yeah, let's go ahead and test that actually. So if I do clear, just some random stuff, I get a post, I get a bad request. So it didn't work because that username or password doesn't work. BBC, DE. So yeah, I get a post like an error because that user doesn't exist.
Okay. So even for your password, everything's case sensitive now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So let's try to get that logged in user. So we can say, what was it up here? I'm just gonna copy this whole thing because it's very similar. Token auth, but instead of token auth, let's look at what route we need to go to. So in the core, in the URLs, we can go to current user and it runs that current user view and it grabs, determine the current user by their token and returns the data. Cool. So if I come over here, instead of token auth, I go to current user. And I've got their token. In addition to the content type, this is where I want to put in authorization. And in here, I want to do JWT because it says what kind of token it is and put token. I don't need to put anything in the body because I'm not sending anything else. I'm not sending a user object or anything. I'm literally just sending the token in the authorization. So that's pretty much it. And now I can say let response equals await get logged. Whoop. Let's first export that. Get logged in user. And now up here it should get logged in user. And now I can actually pass in that user the token from local storage. So I can literally copy this whole thing now. So grabs that. Now I can let's just console log the response to see if it worked. And now down here, so I created that method. I can say, hey, if there isn't a user, run the get user method. And in here, I'm just going to actually run this once. Get logged in user is not defined. So I need to import get logged in user. Great. I don't have history. That's fine. So if I refresh this, now if I do TA preet, 1, 2, 3, cool, I get that logged in user. But now if I refresh or go to the home page, uh-oh, what happened? Current user, unexpected token, and JSON position 1. So it looks like I got an error somewhere. What happened? So let's actually post. What happened? Let's see. Fetch localhost current user. Open talk. So that logged in user did not work. Let's log in. Pre 1, 2, 3. Just gonna check local storage. All right. Still did not work. Let's see what's going on. Not found. Current user. Current underscore user. Ugh. See if that works. So if I refresh this, still got it 0. I'm trying to do something. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Be back at 10:33. So the auth token is coming from when I initially log in, I get a response back. And if there's a token, I create that auth token. I'm setting that. That's what I'm creating that key on local storage. So I'm setting an item called auth token, and I'm setting that value to the token.
All right. Got about line 34. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I got a question.
Yep.
Does your local storage auth dash token variable name, what happens if the user is visiting multiple sites and another site calls their token the same thing and overrides yours? How do you deal with that? Does that need to be unique?
So the local storage is unique to that specific page, I believe. So like here, I'm visiting React Router, and it doesn't have any local storage on this web page.
Okay, cool.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to bring in some working code and we'll walk through it. It's a little bit different, but I'll walk through it. So we have our users. Sorry. So here's that get logged in user, takes in a token, has the authorization. I'm going to actually change this to async await. Async try. And move this up here. And then let response equals await. And then return, or I would say let data equals response.json. And then return data. And then catch error console.error error. And everything still is working. All right. What the hell? Okay, yeah, I'll probably have to refactor some of this. Let's see. Oh, hold on a second. Okay, yeah, it still works. All right. So here is the use effect that we had before that says local storage. If there's an auth user, this one's called auth user. I can change these to token. Down here. Token. I've got this set user. I also have this is logged in, which is just a Boolean value, but that It's just what I have. So it logs in a user. So if I go to login page, TA preet, 1, 2, 3, submit, it routes me. It doesn't actually route me anywhere. So what happens is if I get a username comes back, I set the login state to true, and I also set the user to the data right here. And then on the login page here, whoop, is this the same? Handle login. There we go. So is logged in. Login page. Wait, this is a different. Is it not? Oh yeah, this is the different one. This is the one that's not working correctly. So if I, here's that. Now if I go to the login page, I've got some conditional rendering that says, hey, if the user is logged in is true, then render this link to the home page and also this button that handle log out. So inside my app.js, I've got this get user to see if there's a user is logged in. If it is, great. I set that set is logged into true. And I also set the user response to the set state. And then in the render login page, I'm passing in several props. Is logged in, which is a Boolean value, the handle login, which we already created, and this handle log out. This handle log out function, it's a simple function that all it does is set the auth user, or I would say auth token. Auth token, auth token, auth token. Sets the auth token value to null, so it clears out my local storage. So if I'm logging out, so it clears out the local storage, so a user is never logged in. It sets the is logged in user to false, and it resets the user state to null. Questions about this use effect of getting a user?
What did you say you used to redirect you to the homepage?
It actually doesn't redirect me to the home page. All it does is on the login page, I have a conditional rendering. So if the user is not logged in, it shows this form. So if I clear out, so here's the login page. So /login. If I log in, I click submit. I'm still going to be on the login page. That's just the way this app is working. And I click submit, but it renders something different on the login page. So if a user is not logged in, it's right here. After I click login, it comes over here, handle logs in or handle login, gets the username, password, sets the local storage to that token, sets is logged in to true, and sets that user data to the actual user right there. So the state has now changed, is logged in as true, consists of a user, and I can come down here where it says render login page. Now is logged in as true, and it has a user. So if I come here, is logged in is true now, so it returns this. So which is just a button and a link to the home page. So now I click to the home page. So in the home page, it has is logged in, the user, and handle log out. So it's got some conditional rendering in the home page. Hey, if there's a user, say hi username. Otherwise, it'll have a link to the login and sign up. Otherwise, it'll have a log out. So that's why it's got home page right there. it says, hey, if there's a user, which there is a user in state, it says hi, TA Preet. I'm just showing you the different props we're passing in. Hey, is the user logged in? So if the user is not logged in, show a link to the login page or the sign up page. Otherwise, have the button, the handle logout method, which the handle logout method literally just clears local storage and resets these values to false and null, the state. So if I log out, now it says login and sign up. What other questions do you have? Let's talk about the sign up page. So if we go to the sign up page, what the hell is that? So the sign up page literally just has a form with a username and password, just like we did with the login page. And when I click handle sign up, I extract just like we did with the login page, but now instead of logging in, I'm signing up. So now I go to the user API for sign up. So right there. And the sign up page or the sign up user method takes in that user object. And instead of going to localhost token auth, it goes to core/users and it's a post method. And I'm just passing in headers and the body JSON.stringify, and it returns. And I'll refactor this to use async await. And so I get that sign up user, I get that response, I turn it into JSON here. If there's an error, I'll say, hey, there's an error signing up. Otherwise, I'll history push to the login page. So if I want to sign up a user, I can say like Tom. That would be like A, B, C, D, something like that. Cool. I don't even remember what my password was. So I signed up and it pushed me to the login page. So I've got user auth, that's the old one. Token auth, which is the new one. I can actually clear user auth because I'm not using that anymore. But if I wanted to log in with Tom, was it Tom? A, B, C, D. I don't even know if that's the actual. All right, so I did log in with that Tom correctly. There we go. So that's how the login page works, or the sign up page. I'm going to change.
And on the sign up page, are you actually sending it to the backend? Because that first user you created a super user on Django. Is this what
Yep.
you're doing here? The same thing?
It's not, yeah, but I'm not creating a super user. I'm just creating a generic user.
Okay.
So it's just not a super user. Console.error. I'm probably gonna have to do a little bit of refactoring here.
Did you create a super user outside of the terminal, or is that only like a terminal?
No, you can. You just have to explicitly like select create super user. Like you have to have like a checkbox for super user when you're in your form. Let response equals await. And then let data equals response dot JSON. And then return data. And then over here, instead of this, I can just data. And that should still work the same. So if I wanted to sign up, Joan, and say like some password, sign up, go to the home page, log in, Joan, and log in, go to the home page. I've got hi Joan. And now if I just keep on refreshing this, it's still going to say hi Joan. See how it kind of glitches? Because it's right, it's going back to the back end, grabbing that user, and then setting that user to state. And if I log out, so if I look over here, dot clear, and now, so I cleared local storage, so that user is no longer in local storage. So if I hard refresh, this Joan is no longer inside of local storage and is no longer logged in. See, now we get that current user, there is no user, so it shows me the login and sign up page. And I can log in now again. So I get my username, go to home, Jones logged in. If I go to local storage, I get that auth token there. And if auth token expires in, I think, 5 minutes. I come over here, JWT, grab that auth token. Am I missing part of it? Grab that. Why didn't it? Is that all of it? So it looks like I'm missing part of it. That's weird. We're not grabbing all, it's all there. What? Copy object. Oh, I see what it did. There we go. So you see user ID is 5. That means I've created 5 users. It expires at 54. So in like 4 minutes. All right. Questions about JWT storing it into local storage, grabbing a logged in user or logging in a user, grabbing a current logged in user through the use effect by saying, hey, if there currently is a auth token inside of local storage, see if that user is still able to log in, or if they're currently logged in. If they are, keep them logged in. Otherwise, don't do anything. What questions do y'all have?